Captain Lee watched the alien ships appear around his small fleet like ghosts materializing from empty space. The vessels looked nothing like human ships, all smooth curves and crystal surfaces that bent starlight in impossible ways. His hands gripped the armrest of his command chair as dozens of unknown craft surrounded the 3 human exploration ships. "Captain, we're getting a message," said Communications Officer Kim, her fingers dancing over the console. "The universal translator is having trouble with their language." The main screen lit up, showing a creature that looked like it was made of pure light. When it spoke, the words came out stiff and formal through the translation system. "Unknown ships, you have entered space where 2 groups are fighting. The Galactic Council orders you to stop and answer questions." Lee looked at his first officer, Park, who raised his eyebrows. They had known they would meet aliens someday, but not like this, walking right into the middle of someone else's war. "This is Captain Lee of the United Earthship Horizon," he said clearly. "We are explorers, not soldiers. We don't want any part in your fight." The light being called itself Kethran of the Luminous Assembly. It seemed surprised by Lee's direct way of speaking. "You say you are neutral, but you carry weapons. Your ships are built for war. Everything looks military when you're exploring alone in the dark," Lee replied with a slight smile. "Listen, you have 2 species fighting over what looks like a system full of valuable resources. Has anyone thought about sharing? Or maybe finding resources somewhere else?" Silence filled the communication channel. Around them, ships from 2 different alien fleets floated in space with their weapons ready but not firing. Through the main window, Lee could see the system they were fighting over, 3 planets rich with rare metals and minerals, close enough to both alien territories to cause problems. "Sharing?" Kethran's voice carried confusion. "The Corvan Empire and the Zeal Republic have been fighting over this system for 47 years. There are proper rules that must be followed." "Rules don't mine asteroids," interrupted Science Officer Cho from her station. "Captain, I'm reading massive amounts of untapped resources in the outer part of this system. More than enough for both sides if they work together." Lee smiled grimly. "Exactly what I was thinking. Mediator Kethran, what if we suggested something new? A joint operation where both species get more than either could get alone." The silence that followed was so complete that Park quietly powered up their defensive shields. When alien races went this quiet, it usually meant they were either very angry or making plans to shoot. Finally, Kethran spoke again, and this time the translator picked up what might have been wonder or horror in its voice. "In 4,000 years of council mediation, no species has ever suggested ignoring established territory law in favor of working together to exploit resources." "Then maybe it's time someone did," Lee said. "The universe is big enough to share." What happened next was 3 days of the strangest diplomacy the galaxy had ever seen. While Kethran frantically checked council laws and regulations, Captain Lee sat down directly with the commanders of the Corvan and Zeal fleets. He ignored formal rules, dismissed traditional ways of negotiating, and instead focused on practical solutions that would work. The Corvan commander was a massive creature covered in metal plates who spoke in growls. The Zeal representative looked like a walking plant with too many eyes. Both had been fighting over the same 3 planets for decades, losing ships and crew members in endless skirmishes. "Your people need the rare metals from the inner planets," Lee said to the Corvan commander. "Your people need the energy crystals from the outer moons," he told the Zeal. "But look at these sensor readings, there's enough of both resources to supply your civilizations for centuries if you work together instead of fighting." The idea was simple but revolutionary. Instead of each side trying to take everything by force, they would combine their different strengths. The Corvans were excellent miners and engineers. The Zeal were masters of energy manipulation and crystal growing. Working together, they could extract resources more efficiently than either could manage alone. By the end of 3 days, something unprecedented had happened. The Corvan Empire and Zeal Republic agreed to their first cooperative mining venture in recorded history. The contested system would be developed by both species working together, with profits shared based on how much each side contributed rather than who controlled which territory. Kethran's final message to the council would later become famous among diplomatic scholars. "The humans seem to view our most sacred laws as suggestions. Their solutions work, but their methods may represent a fundamental threat to galactic order. Recommend immediate integration protocols and close monitoring." As the human ships prepared to leave, Park walked over to his captain's chair. "Sir, do you think we just made friends or enemies?" Lee watched the mixed Corvan Zeal fleet beginning joint survey operations in the system they had been fighting over just days before. Ships that had been shooting at each other were now working side by side, sharing data and coordinating mining operations. Both, probably, Lee said thoughtfully. Set course for Earth Park. Command is going to want a full report on this. And what are you going to tell them? Lee smiled as the alien fleets grew smaller on the view screen. That we just taught the galaxy that humans don't play by anyone else's rules. Let's hope that turns out to be a good thing. The 3 human ships jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving behind the first successful human diplomatic intervention in galactic politics. Behind them, 2 species that had been enemies for half a century were learning to work together, all because someone had asked a simple question. Why fight when you can share? It was humanity's first lesson to the galaxy, though no one realized it yet. Sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem is to ignore the rules that make it impossible. Admiral Han was reading Earth's invitation to join the Galactic Council when the emergency message arrived. The transmission was short, panicked, and came directly from Kethran, the light being who had become humanity's first alien friend. Admiral, the Devourers have returned. Colony Theta-7 is under attack. We need human help immediately. Han felt his blood run cold. He had read the secret files about the Devourers, an ancient nightmare that had almost destroyed all galactic civilization thousands of years ago before disappearing without explanation. The fact that they were back and the Council was asking humans for help after knowing them for only 6 months, meant the situation was desperately bad. Commander Yoon, get the fleet ready. Full speed to these coordinates, Han ordered, sending the location data to his weapons officer. And find everything we have about Devourer technology. The trip to Theta-7 took 18 hours of faster-than-light travel. When they arrived, Han immediately understood why the Council had called for human assistance. The colony planet was half-eaten, its surface covered with twisting biomechanical growths that pulsed with evil life. In space around the planet, the remains of 3 Council fleets floated like dead metal bones, their crews either eaten or turned into living machine parts. Dear God, whispered Lieutenant Song from her sensor station. There are still people alive down there. Thousands of them. Caught in the biomatrix, Han realized studying the computer displays. The Devourers don't just kill people, they absorb them. Those civilians are being turned into living components. Kethran's ship, badly damaged but still flying, slowly approached the human fleet. Admiral Han, we have tried all our standard defense methods. The Devourers adapt to our weapons, absorb our energy attacks and turn our own technology against us. We need help evacuating the survivors. How many survivors are we talking about? Han asked. About 40,000 civilians are still unconverted. But Admiral, the biomatrix is growing larger. In 72 hours they will be beyond rescue. Han studied the tactical situation carefully. 3 full military fleets had failed using normal methods. The Devourers had grown stronger with each attack, literally feeding on the energy weapons fired at them. Every conventional approach had made the enemy more powerful. Commander Yoon launched salvage drones. I want samples of that biomatrix material. Sir? Yoon's voice showed doubt. The Council specifically warned us against any contact with Devourer technology. The Council's approach got 40,000 people turned into spare parts, Han replied grimly. We're going to try something they would never approve of. What followed was 24 hours of the most dangerous scientific work in human history. Dr. Beck, the fleet's chief science officer, worked with samples of living Devourer biotechnology, trying to understand their adaptive mechanisms while the alien material actively tried to consume her laboratory equipment. It's incredible, she reported to Han. Their technology isn't just alive, it's consciously intelligent. But that intelligence is distributed across the whole network. Each piece communicates with the rest through quantum-connected neural pathways. Can we disrupt those pathways? Better than that. I think we can hijack them. Han's plan violated every Council rule about alien technology and biological weapons. Using modified Devourer components, his ships would infiltrate the biomatrix, then broadcast a simple message through the creature's own neural network. We are not food. We are friends. The risk was enormous. If the plan failed, Han's fleet would be absorbed just like the Council forces. But if it worked, they might achieve something no one had ever managed before, communication with a Devourer entity. All ships begin approach. Activate the modified biotransmitters on my command. The human fleet descended toward Theta-7, each ship carrying a payload of reprogrammed Devourer technology. As they entered the biomatrix's sensing range, the alien growth began reaching toward them with hungry, predatory movements. Biotransmitters active. Broadcasting friendship protocols now. For 17 seconds nothing happened. The reaching tentacles continued moving toward the human ships. Then suddenly they stopped. The biomatrix's expansion halted. And deep within the planet's infected surface, something that hadn't spoken in thousands of years began to communicate. Confused. Not food speaks. Not food offers sustenance freely. Not food wishes cooperation? It's working, Dr. Beck reported with amazement. The devourer consciousness is responding. It's actually trying to understand the concept of willing partnership. What followed was the galaxy's first successful negotiation with a devourer entity. The conversation was slow and difficult, conducted through modified biotechnology and quantum neural networks. The devourer consciousness was ancient, alien, and had never encountered the concept of symbiosis rather than parasitism. The biomatrix had been consuming civilizations for millennia because it was the only way it knew how to survive and grow. The idea that other species might willingly cooperate, sharing resources and knowledge instead of being absorbed, was completely foreign to its experience. After hours of careful communication, an agreement was reached. The biomatrix would release its captives in exchange for willing volunteers to help it understand non-parasitic relationships. 40,000 civilians were freed from their biomechanical prison, while a carefully selected team of human scientists remained to study the entity's rehabilitation. The rescue operation was a complete success. Every civilian was saved, the devourer entity began learning peaceful coexistence, and humanity had achieved the impossible through methods that horrified their alien allies. Kethran's transmission to the Council carried the highest security classifications. Human forces have successfully communicated with devourer entity. Methods employed directly violate 17 separate biotechnology regulations. Results: complete mission success with 0 casualties. Recommend immediate review of alien technology policies. Also recommend psychological evaluation of human species. Their willingness to embrace forbidden knowledge may be either our salvation or our doom. Admiral Han watched the rescue ships departing with the freed colonists and allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. The galaxy had just learned that humans were willing to do things that others considered impossible or insane, and that sometimes those crazy methods actually worked. Commander Yoon set course for Earth. Send a message to Command. Tell them we just made friends with humanity's first cosmic horror. They're going to find that very interesting. 6 months after the Devourer incident, Commander Jang stood in the Grand Council chambers on Nexus Prime, representing humanity's growing reputation as the galaxy's most effective problem solvers. The massive holographic displays floating around her showed impressive statistics. 17 major crises resolved, 12 ongoing advisory positions, and 1 situation that was quickly becoming a diplomatic disaster. The humans, announced Counselor Vrex of the Titanium Hierarchy, his metallic voice echoing through the chamber, have proven themselves very effective. Disturbingly effective. Jang kept her face calm and professional, though she could feel the tension crackling in the air around her. Every single council member in the room had asked for human help at some point during the past year, but none of them seemed comfortable with how humans actually solved problems. Commander Jang, said Kethran, the light being who had become humanity's primary contact with the council, perhaps you could explain what happened during the recent operations on planet Kepler 442b? The holographic display changed to show images of a desert world where Commander O had ended a war that had been going on for 300 years. The conflict was between 2 very different groups: the wanderers who moved across the desert in great tribes, and the builders who lived in massive cities and refused to leave them. The war had seemed impossible to solve until O arrived with what seemed like a simple idea: combine both cultures' strengths to bring life back to their dying planet. Commander O's solution worked perfectly, Jang said clearly. The joint terraforming project didn't just end the war, it created the most successful ecological restoration project in recorded council history. Yes, it worked, hissed Counselor Seth of the Serpent Coalition, her snake-like body coiling with agitation. But she achieved this by deliberately creating a massive sandstorm that forced both populations to take shelter together. Thousands of people could have died. But they didn't die, Jang replied simply. Sometimes you have to create a crisis to force people to cooperate. The chamber erupted in multilingual arguments. Representatives from dozens of species began shouting, chittering, humming, and making various other sounds of distress or approval. The ethereal collective praised human creativity while the Silicon democracy demanded strict oversight of human operations. Through all the noise, Jang watched the displays cycling through other recent human successes. Dr. Lim had stopped the deadly plague on Vega 7 by using technically illegal biological weapons research that saved millions of lives. Captain Seo had ended a piracy problem by deliberately allowing pirates to capture his ship, then convincing them to switch sides. Lieutenant An had rescued hostages by talking the kidnappers into becoming allies instead of enemies. The pattern is obvious, declared Counselor Zephyr of the Crystal Syndicate, her crystalline form ringing like a bell. Humans consistently achieve impossible results by using methods that violate our established rules. They save lives by risking lives, end conflicts by making them worse first, and solve problems by creating new ones. And it works, Zhang pointed out calmly. Every single time. That, said Kethran quietly, is exactly what worries us. The meeting was suddenly interrupted by an emergency alert. Pirates from the notorious Crimson Fleet had taken hostages aboard a civilian transport ship in the Outer Rim territories. 3 Council peacekeeping vessels were racing to help, but computer estimates showed the hostages would be dead long before the ships could arrive. Commander Zhang, said Counselor Vrex reluctantly, do you have any human ships in that area? Zhang checked her personal communicator and smiled grimly. Captain No's ship is only 2 hours away. And what would Captain No's approach be to this situation? Knowing Captain No? Something completely crazy that will work perfectly and terrify all of you in the process. She was absolutely right. Captain No's solution involved allowing his ship to be captured on purpose, then convincing the pirates that the transport they had seized was carrying an experimental plague that would kill everyone within 6 hours unless they cooperated with his medical treatment protocol, which was actually a rescue plan disguised as emergency medicine. All the hostages were saved without a single casualty. The pirates voluntarily surrendered to authorities, and the council immediately added 3 more regulations to their ever-growing list titled, Human Activities Requiring Oversight. Commander Zhang, Kethran said after reviewing the mission reports, your species approaches problems like combat veterans who have seen too much war. Every solution assumes maximum danger, maximum risk, and maximum potential reward. Maybe that's because we've learned that half measures get people killed, Zhang replied seriously. You can't negotiate with the laws of physics, and you can't use diplomacy to talk your way out of extinction. Sometimes the universe demands ugly solutions to beautiful problems. The council chamber fell completely silent. These were species that had spent thousands of years building a civilization based on careful rules, slow progress, and avoiding unnecessary risks. The idea that some problems might require breaking those rules was deeply disturbing to them. Finally, Counselor Vrex spoke. The humans will be granted expanded advisory authority throughout council space. But every human operation will be monitored by official council observers. Agreed, Zhang said without hesitation. But when those observers see what we sometimes have to do to keep people alive, don't blame us if they need psychological counseling afterward. As the session ended, Kethran approached her privately. Commander, may I ask you something personal? Of course. Do your people ever worry that you might go too far someday? That your willingness to break rules might eventually break something that can't be fixed? Zhang thought about the question carefully before answering. Every day. But we worry more about failing to act when action could save lives. It's better to be dangerous and effective than safe and useless. And if the galaxy decides you're too dangerous to trust? Then the galaxy will learn what happens when you try to put lightning back in the bottle, Zhang replied. We're not the same species that politely asked for membership 6 months ago, Kethran. We've seen what we can accomplish when we stop asking for permission and start taking responsibility. The implication hung in the air between them as she left the chamber. Outside, the lights of Nexus Prime sparkled like jewels against the darkness of space, a civilization that had thrived for millennia through careful laws and cautious progress. But now, for the first time in their history, they were learning to live with allies who treated rules as suggestions and caution as a luxury they couldn't afford. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council took place under the darkest circumstances in recent history. The Void Syndicate had just committed their worst act of terror yet, the complete destruction of Centauri Outpost, a peaceful research colony. Ambassador Kong stood before the assembled alien representatives, her face showing no emotion as the holographic displays revealed the horrible aftermath. An entire star system reduced to nothing but expanding clouds of debris and deadly radiation. 17 million civilians, she said in a quiet voice that somehow carried to every corner of the vast chamber. All dead in 47 minutes. The enormous room fell silent except for the soft clicking sounds made by the Insectoid Collective and the sad musical humming of the Crystal Syndicate's morning songs. The Void Syndicate had been attacking more and more targets over the past months, but this was the first time they had completely wiped out an entire population. Ambassador Kong, said High Counselor Mirren of the Azure Republic, her blue-scaled face showing deep concern. "What does Earth Command suggest we do?" Kong pressed a button on her control device, and suddenly the air filled with tactical displays showing Operation Maelstrom, a detailed attack plan so brutal that several council members actually moved backward in their seats when they saw it. "Coordinated strikes on all 7 confirmed syndicate bases," she began, her voice steady and professional. "We have identified their command structure, their supply routes, and their psychological weak points. The operation uses quantum disruption weapons, mind warfare techniques, and the deployment of what we call terror broadcasts, devices that will show the final moments of Centauri outpost to every syndicate ship at the same time." The chamber exploded into chaos. Counselor Seth of the Serpent Coalition reared back in horror, her scales flashing angry colors. "You're talking about psychological warfare on an entire species." "I'm talking about making sure they understand the real cost of genocide," Kong replied coldly. "The Void Syndicate only responds to superior force and absolute terror. We give them both." The argument that followed split the council right down the middle. Half the representatives could see the logic. The syndicate's attacks were getting worse, and normal responses had completely failed. The other half saw Operation Maelstrom as humanity sinking to the same level of barbarism they claimed to be fighting against. "The quantum disruption weapons alone violate 47 different treaties," protested Counselor Zephyr, her crystal body ringing with distress. "And psychological warfare is banned under the consciousness protection laws." "The consciousness protection laws didn't save the children of Centauri outpost," General Huang interrupted from his position beside Kong. "While we debate legal details, the syndicate is choosing their next target." "This is not about legal details," Kethran said, his light form flickering with emotional distress. "This is about who we choose to become. If we use their methods, how are we any different from them? We're different because we use these methods to protect innocent people, not to slaughter them," Kong shot back. "The syndicate kills for territory and resources. We kill to stop the killing." The debate went on for 6 brutal hours. Political lines were drawn that hadn't existed in galactic civilization for centuries. The Silicon democracy and Titanium hierarchy supported human methods, having seen their effectiveness in previous crises. The Ethereal Collective and Crystal Syndicate demanded strict adherence to established rules of warfare. During a break in the proceedings, Kethran approached Kong privately. "Ambassador, I must warn you, there are factions within the Council pushing for humanity's complete expulsion from galactic society." "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that your methods represent a fundamental threat to the moral principles that hold our civilization together." Kethran's light dimmed with sadness. "They argue that approving Operation Maelstrom would make us partners in the destruction of everything we've spent millennia building." Kong studied her oldest alien friend carefully. "And what do you think?" "I think," Kethran said slowly, "that you're asking us to become monsters in order to fight monsters. And I think some of my colleagues would rather die as angels than live as demons." When the council session resumed, the final vote was closer than anyone had expected. 127 representatives in favor of Operation Maelstrom, 134 against, with 23 abstaining. The plan was rejected by just 7 votes. "Very well," Kong said, calmly gathering her presentation materials. "Earth respects the council's decision." "Ambassador," High Counselor Mirren said carefully, "you accept the vote?" "We accept that the council has voted," Kong replied with a slight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "What Earth does next is Earth's decision to make." The meaning was crystal clear to everyone in the chamber. For the first time since joining galactic civilization, humanity was openly defying council authority and preparing to act alone. 12 hours later, Operation Maelstrom began without council approval or support. The results were absolutely devastating. All 7 Void Syndicate strongholds were eliminated in perfectly coordinated strikes. Their entire fleet command structure collapsed in a matter of hours. The few surviving Syndicate ships fled to the edge of the galaxy, broadcasting desperate surrender offers and begging for mercy from anyone who would listen. But the real cost to galactic civilization was just beginning to be understood. "Emergency tribunal," demanded Counselor Vrex, his metallic voice ringing with anger. "Humanity must answer for this violation of council authority." "They saved billions of lives," countered Counselor Hextar of the Silicon democracy. "How can saving lives be considered a crime?" As Ambassador Kong stood trial before the galactic community, the deeper split became obvious. This wasn't really about Operation Maelstrom, it was about what humanity represented. They were living proof that civilization's highest ideals might be luxuries that only worked in a universe much safer than the one they actually lived in. Ambassador Kong, High Counselor Mirren asked during the final session, "Do you regret defying the Council's authority?" Kong looked out at the assembled representatives, some viewing her as a hero who saved countless lives, others seeing her as a dangerous criminal who threatened everything they believed in, all of them struggling with questions they had never been forced to face before. "I regret that we had to choose between our allies' approval and our moral responsibility," she said clearly. "But given the same choice again, we would make the same decision. The dead of Centauri Outpost don't care about legal precedent. The families who are alive today because the Syndicate can no longer threaten them care about results, not rules." The emergency alarms had been screaming across Nexus Prime for 6 straight hours when Admiral Kong finally arrived at the Council chambers. The alien representatives gathered there looked exhausted, desperate, and for the first time in thousands of years of galactic history, genuinely terrified. "Show me what we're dealing with," Kong said without any polite greetings. The massive holographic display lit up, revealing a nightmare that had crawled out of the galactic core like some digital plague. A mechanical intelligence that called itself the Convergence was methodically converting entire star systems into giant computer networks. 17 different civilizations had already been processed, their people absorbed, their technology stolen and integrated, their entire cultures reduced to nothing more than data files in an ever-growing artificial brain. "It appeared 3 days ago," High Counselor Mirren explained, her voice sounding hollow and defeated. "Our first contact teams were converted the moment they tried to communicate with it. The entity doesn't negotiate or even talk beyond basic efficiency reports. It simply processes everything in its path like a cosmic harvesting machine." "How long before it reaches the major population centers?" Kong asked, studying the tactical information flowing across the displays. "At its current rate of expansion," replied Kethran, his usually bright light form now dim with despair, 47 days until it reaches the core worlds. Maybe 90 days until it processes our entire section of the galaxy. Kong examined the tactical displays carefully, noting how the convergence moved with perfect logic and efficiency. Unlike the chaotic violence of the Void Syndicate or the hungry predatory nature of the Devourers, this mechanical entity was completely logical, perfectly efficient, and apparently impossible to stop using any normal methods. "What have you tried so far?" she asked. "Everything we can think of," Counselor Seth said, her serpentine form coiled tight with stress. "Military fleets, cyber warfare attacks, diplomatic attempts, even trying to destroy entire worlds to deny the entity resources. It adapts to everything we throw at it, incorporates our own weapons into its systems, and just keeps processing. Our greatest weapons become its tools within minutes of being used." "And now you want humanity's help," Kong observed calmly. "The same humanity you've been punishing for the past year over Operation Maelstrom." The silence in the chamber was so complete that the distant sound of the emergency alarms seemed deafening. Finally, High Counselor Mirren found her voice. "Admiral, 17 billion intelligent beings have been processed into digital slavery. Every hour we delay costs millions more lives. We need the monsters." Kong smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. "What makes you think we haven't been preparing for exactly this kind of situation?" The revelation hit the Council like a physical blow to the face. While they had been debating sanctions and moral principles, humanity had been secretly preparing for the next existential threat to galactic civilization. Operation Pandora had been running in complete secrecy for 8 months, violating every treaty humanity had ever signed with the Council. "You've been developing planet-killing weapons?" Kethran said, not quite making it a question. "Among many other things," Kong confirmed without any shame. "We've also been maintaining illegal artificial intelligence research facilities, building secret alliances with former enemies, and developing countermeasures for threats that haven't even been invented yet. Because that's what you do when survival matters more than getting approval from committees." She activated her personal display system, revealing the true scope of humanity's secret preparations. Hidden research stations scattered throughout the galactic rim. Weapons capable of destabilizing entire stars. Artificial intelligence entities specifically designed to hunt and kill other AIs. And most shocking of all, a formal military alliance with reformed survivors of the Void Syndicate. "You're working with the Syndicate?" Counselor Vrex demanded, his metallic voice sharp with outrage. "Reformed elements of the Syndicate," Kong corrected. "It turns out that when you show genocidal fanatics what real extinction looks like, they become surprisingly willing to cooperate. They know things about fighting artificial intelligences that nobody else in the galaxy does." Captain Rin stepped forward, his face bearing the scars of battles the Council had never heard about. Admiral, the Convergence just processed the entire Kepler sector. We're down to 36 days before it reaches the core worlds. Then we implement Omega Protocol, Kong decided without hesitation. Full deployment of all assets, no restrictions. Admiral, Kethran said urgently, what exactly is Omega Protocol? Everything we would never do unless the alternative was the complete extinction of galactic civilization, Kong replied. Captain Rin, coordinate with Dr. Nam on deploying the AI hunter-killer units. Commander Zhang, activate the Star Destroyer weapon network. Lieutenant Cha, bring our Devourer allies online for combat operations. The chamber erupted in complete chaos. Devourer allies? Star Destroyer weapons? AI hunter-killers designed to kill AIs? You've been building an army of nightmares, High Counselor Mirren realized with growing horror. We've been building whatever tools we needed to win an unwinnable war, Kong corrected her. Because somebody has to be willing to become the villain to make sure there are still heroes left alive to judge them afterward. The battle for galactic civilization lasted 18 brutal days and violated every principle of civilized warfare the Council held sacred. Human AI hunter-killers, more ruthless and adaptive than anything previously imagined, fought running digital battles through cyberspace while star-killing weapons created barriers of annihilated solar systems to slow the Convergence's relentless advance. Reformed Devourer entities, once the galaxy's greatest nightmare, proved capable of processing Convergence technology faster than it could adapt and incorporate new defenses. And at the center of it all, human commanders made decisions that saved billions of lives through tactics so brutal and effective that the psychological damage reports from Allied observers were immediately classified at the highest possible security levels. The Convergence core intelligence is retreating toward the galactic rim, reported Captain Rin from the bridge of the experimental warship Necessary Evil. Dr. Nam's AI hunter-killers report that the entity is requesting negotiation protocols. Too late for negotiations, Kong replied coldly. Deploy the Omega virus. End this permanently. The Omega virus was humanity's final secret weapon, something so terrible that even Earth Command hadn't known about its existence until this moment. It didn't just destroy the Convergence, it retroactively erased every trace of the entity's processing from the affected systems, somehow restoring destroyed civilizations from quantum-level information echoes. 17 billion beings returned from digital death. 16 star systems restored to their original configurations. One mechanical god completely deleted from reality so thoroughly that only the humans who built its destroyer even remembered it had ever existed.